I'm Ken. Let's take a look at my Japanese stamp collection today. Let's start with this first page. Well, it's empty. I hope that isn't an indication of what's to come, or maybe it is. My Japanese collection is in a similar state to what my US collection was when I was a beginning collector. I have a lot of the common issues, but not a lot of the uncommon stamps. That's a great place to be in any collection. It means I have a lot of room to find more stamps. With each new lot, I find something encouraging to add to my collection. I've come to a place with my US collection where I don't have many more uncommon stamps to find. That's making it a little less fun, which is why I've expanded my collection to other countries, like this collection of Japanese stamps. My Japanese collection is of regular issue stamps like most of my collections. This first page is for the first two regular issue series from Japan. The first one I've labeled Two Dragons Facing, but it's also known as the Ryuman issues. Time to interject here. I don't speak Japanese. I can't even read the Japanese characters, and that puts me at a horrible disadvantage for being able to understand this Japanese stamp collection universe. Anyway, I am at a deep disadvantage both culturally and language-wise for understanding these stamps, and so I think the best thing to do when you're in that position is just move forward, trying your very best and learn as you go along. I'm hoping that somebody out there, if I do something wrong, will cut me a little slack on that, but also I hope that if you see that I'm saying something wrong or pronouncing something wrong, that you'll reach into the comments and help me get it right. Anyway, these first stamps are called the Ryuman issues. I say Ryuman, but I don't know what that means. Google Translate apparently doesn't know what that means either, and so as I dig a little bit deeper, I think what I'm finding is that Ryu can mean dragon in Japanese, and these stamps have two dragons facing each other. The other part of this stamp is Mon. Mon is the currency value of the first four stamps in this series. So anyway, Ryuman it is for now. The first series is the Ryuman issues. The first four are denominated in Mon, which is a pre-yen currency. Although I have to take the catalog's word for this because I can't read a bit of the kanji text on these stamps. This stamp is denominated 48 Mon. I can tell that only because the brown color matches up with the denomination in the catalog. I'm sure it would be clear as day if I read Japanese. The last four stamps are denominated in sen. 100 Mon equals 1 sen. But these last four stamps are denominated in the yen currency value where 100 sen equals a yen. These sen are not the same sen as are associated with those earlier Mon stamps. The currency changed for these last four stamps. So here's another place where my lack of language and cultural background may be failing me. With these yen value stamps not being from the Mon currency, it's possible that only the first four stamps are called Ryuman issues. Collectively, these 8 issues are sometimes also called just the Ryu issues. All these issues catalog over $100. It's not impossible that I'll get one, but it's unlikely. And all these stamps come with color, paper, and type variations, which are even less likely for me to find the way that I collect. By the next year, Japan started issuing new stamps, this time adding Latin values for the denominations. These are collectively known as the Imperial Crest stamps. The Imperial Crest is the national seal of Japan and is also called the Chrysanthemum seal. In Japanese, that's Kikamon. Actually, all stamps from here until 1947 feature the Chrysanthemum seal. And so when I put these pages together, I got another thing wrong. Collectors call this period of stamps from 1872 to 1875 the Cherry Blossom issues. I'll fix this page. But even calling them collectively the Cherry Blossom issues doesn't paint a clear picture of the diversity of these issues. The first and second series, Scott 9 through 25, look similar, with Kiri branches forming an oval at the center and the Latin denomination along the top and bottom. The cherry blossoms are the flowers in the four corners. The third and fourth columns use a belt to form the oval. That continues to the lower denominations of the fifth series. But then new designs pop up all over the place. Some featuring the dragons again, a return of the Kiri branches, and even a few birds in oval frames. This is not the video to go over all of these, nor do I have any copies in my collection to share. Again, all these stamps are on the expensive side for me. Let's move on to the first stamps from Japan that I actually have. I was inspired to do this video by watching a recent episode from Silk on the Web. Silk is a creator that I greatly admire and enjoy watching. He took a break from sharing his progress on building a complete-ish collection of US stamps to share his Japanese collection, which he culled from a number of places scattered across his collection. Silk's video reminded me that I had gotten distracted from finishing my Japanese regular issue album while waiting on an order of stamp mounts to arrive. By the time the stamp mounts arrived, I had started working through a large mystery box that I'd bought from the Spellman Museum. I was distracted away from that mystery box when a friend gave me a relative's old stamp collection. And then I got that trash bag of stamps I've been trying to rescue, which distracted me even more. Anyway, with all that, I had forgotten about my half-finished Japanese album pages. Silk's video was a push from above to finish that album off, and in conversation with him, share my collection with you too. Thanks, Silk. The issues on this page are collectively known as the cobons. I'll update my pages file to reflect that too. These stamps have a coherent look to them for me, although there is some variety to them. They came in 4 different releases, with the designs consistent by denomination across them. The key difference is the colors. I've got a nice start on these stamps, with stamps from the 1st, 3rd, and 4th releases. These aren't very expensive, but these are exactly the kind of stamps I enjoy finding in old lots, so I probably won't buy them individually to fill out this page. Actually, that's probably true of most stamps in my Japanese collection. This next set is called the Chrysanthemum Flower Seal issue. I've updated my pages file to show that too. These stamps are very common, and I've got a good start on them. Scott lists these as one big set starting in 1899 and going through 1907, but I don't think that tells the story quite right. The bulk of these issues were released between 1899 and 1901. In 1906 and 1907, a new value was added, the 6th sen, and 3 values were released with new colors. I've decided to put all the stamps in catalog order, but show those 2 releases separately in my table. See how the 1.5 sen stamps came in both light blue and purple. Same with my 3 sen purple and pink versions. This display format works well for my understanding. Those of you who have followed me for a while know that I sometimes stack series by colors. I'm not consistent about that, obviously. I make that call on a per series basis, whatever I think works best for that series. It's a nice benefit of making my own pages. Oh, and look here. For these stamps, I stack them by series. These 4 strips have stamps that are unwatermarked, watermarked with zigzags, and watermarked with an odd wavy design. The zigzag watermark stamps also come in 2 widths, one from an old die and one from the new. It's a little complicated, but not too bad. I have 4 pages of these issues. The first 3 break the series up by denomination, and I've left a 4th page for the coils and overprints, although that page is currently blank. My collection gets a little light with the higher denominations. This page is a good place to talk about the way I find most of my stamps. When I was getting ready to film this video, I realized I hadn't pulled out the Japanese stamps from those lots that had distracted me from completing this album in the first place. It seemed like I should do that before I recorded. Might as well be as complete as possible. When I was done, I had all these stamps to sort through. I had stamps from the mystery box in those envelopes, stamps from friends who had given me old family collections, and those 2 big piles at the bottom are stamps from that bag of trash stamps I'd rescued. A lot of duplicates for sure, but this turned out to be quite a big addition to my collection. These stamps are additions to this series from the stamps my friends gave me. None of the lots had stamps from those earlier issues, but from here forward there were new stamps to add to almost every regular issue series in my Japanese collection. And here are some of the larger denomination stamps I got from the bag of trash stamps. I think it should be clear by now that the rescue mission continues to be worth the effort. Nothing too valuable, but the joy for me comes from finding something I don't already have. So yes, a lot of joy in these lots. So if I went through every stamp in my Japanese album, this video would be too long and too boring. So I won't do that. I'll flip through the pages and mention the highlights as I go. These are the Mount Fuji issues. I added 4 of these in this round. I just have the 1 stamp in this series. And just 1 for this series featuring Empress Jingo. Her story is beyond my regional and cultural understanding. To call these stamps a series is a stretch, though. There are only 2 different stamp designs, with 2 watermarks and an overprint. It might even be a stretch to call this a regular issue. I am honestly not sure. We'll see later how Japanese stamps push the norms of what a regular issue looks like. Again, in a way that makes it difficult for me to get it quite right culturally. Let's pause here for a moment. These stamps are New Year's card stamps. I understand that New Year's cards are as important a tradition in Japan as the Thanksgiving turkey is to Americans. Starting in 1935, on some years a single stamp was issued to pay the rate for these New Year's cards. After New Year's, these stamps would continue to be used for regular letters. In most ways, you can think of these as regular issue stamps, but they weren't issued every year, nor were they always issued to pay for New Year's cards, nor were they always issued as regular issues. Take the larger stamp on this page. This stamp is not regular issue size, nor was it used to pay for New Year's cards. The stamp was issued on January 1st, 1951. It was the 9th prize in the New Year's lottery. Actually, the 9th prize was a sheet of 5 of these stamps. So it's definitely not a regular issue, even though it is similar in idea to the regular issue-like stamps on this page of mine. I treat 5 of the years of these New Year's issues like regular issues. They are very common, look like regular issues, and well, that's what I decided to do. I'm not sure if this is right, but it helps me when I'm looking through a lot to not be confused when I see these peeking back at me. I intend to add the New Year's lottery stamps to this page for reference, but not really seek them out. Moving on. I'm making good progress on this set. I'm just missing the 5 and 10 yen denominations, although I could use a better copy of the 6-sen lighthouse. Most of these stamps have a similar look to them, like they belong together, except for the few that don't seem to fit. That's just one of the cultural things I've had to get used to with Japanese stamps. There's often a theme to the set, but the stamps don't all fit that theme. I am aware of a Japanese aesthetic of not making things look too perfect. Perhaps that's what's going on here. Also, notice the 2 portrait stamps. These carry forward to other series. The 2-sen crimson General Nogi stamp shows up again in 1942 as a 3-cent brown stamp, and again in 1945 as an imperforate stamp. The 4-sen green Admiral Togo shows up in 1942 as both 5-sen and 7-cent stamps. This kind of sharing of stamps across series is a common feature of Japanese regular issues, and I can find no pattern to it. This series shares some designs from the previous series, like I mentioned. The designs are different, but share some similarities, except that 40-sen stamp really looks like it belongs to the previous set. I already mentioned how the General Nogi stamp is reissued in the next series, but so is the 20-sen Mount Fuji stamp and the 30-sen Shrine stamp from this series. I don't have either of those to show you. This series and the next were issued imperforate. I'll talk about these as 2 series, but they overlap in time and design in a way I've never seen any other regular issue series from another country do. These are listed in the catalog as contiguous numbers, starting at 2 sen and going all the way to 10 yen. The next series, issued from 1946 to 1952, also have contiguous numbers, and start low at 15 sen, going up to a high value of 100 yen. The only design overlap is the 10 yen plum blossom stamp. It's reissued in a slightly different color, this time denominated at 100 yen. Look, the first stamp is the 10 yen plum blossom from this first imperforate set. The second is the 100 yen. Kinda hard to tell the difference at a casual glance. The third stamp is the 10 yen National Art Treasure stamp, which was issued perforated in 1948, and again as part of a later 1950 to 1952 series. And finally, there's a horizontal format doppelganger from another series issued in 1947, while this first series was still ongoing. I can hear you all wondering why I've included this 10 sen perforated stamp with this imperforate series. Yeah, it doesn't make the most sense, except that there is one other stamp that was issued at the same time, a perforated version of the 50-sen coal miners stamp from the imperforate part of this set. Even though I don't have one of those, it 100% belongs with this series. And so since the National Art Treasure was released at the exact same time, I think it best belongs here too, even though it was reissued with another series later. It should be getting clear now why these Japanese regular issue stamps are such a challenge for me to understand and collect. This series came out at almost the same time as the previous series, starting in just the next year and otherwise running concurrently with them. Again, such an odd release pattern for these issues. First they were issued in perforate, then 3 were issued perforated, with the 30-cent pagoda stamp also coming out rouletted. 4 of them were reissued in 1947 perforated, but not at the same time as the first perforated stamps, which is more obvious because there's yet another issue of that 30-cent pagoda stamp. And finally, one stamp, the 4-yen geese stamp, is reissued as part of a larger series in 1950. We'll get there in a moment. That second purple National Art Treasure stamp was also included in that later 1950 series. So confusing. Around this time, a number of stamps were also issued as souvenir sheets, but I don't have any of those yet. Oh, and yet another short series issued concurrently in 1947, going from 35 sen to 10 yen. There's something about this big 35 stamp that makes me smile. There's a 45 sen version too. And 2 other stamps came out concurrent with the 2 imperforate sets. This time 2 more big number stamps, 150 yen and 380 yen. Although these are separate releases, well maybe, from the stamps on the previous page. And next, this totally new series. This set came out in 1948 and 49. I generally don't care to have you track dates like some bad history class. Suffice it to say that these came out while all the previous series, back to the imperforate sets, were still coming out. At least these are higher value stamps than the previous sets. I'd have to guess that there was some postal rate changes that caused this, but I really don't know. I've got 3 pages for these issues, including a blank one for the souvenir sheets. On this page, the first 2 strips have the first issues. All these issues have denominations with the 00 spelled out. The second 2 strips are for the versions of these stamps that leave out the 00 part of the denomination. Those came out last of all the sets in this series. This table shows more examples of how differently the Japanese approach regular issues from the Western countries I'm familiar with. The first set came out with a watermark. Then in 1950 they were reissued without the watermark. But not just reissued. Some stamps were added to the set while others were deleted from the set. The third set was issued, like we've seen, without the 00 in the denominations. Some designs were added, like the 4 yen, but the rest of the designs were reissued from the second set. None of the third set stamps were reprints of the first set, but they are all tied together by the overlap with that second set. Along the bottom of this table, I've also noted that 2 of the designs were reissued much later, continuing up to 2010. This is what I have of the unwatermarked 00 stamps. This series is pretty straightforward, except that 4 of the stamps were reissued with new colors in later sets. This series is like the previous one, with a few stamps being reissued in later sets, but I should point out that none of these stamps have the word Nippon on them, which would be added with those later sets. Another rather easy set to understand now that we get the pattern of Japanese stamps. Again, many of these stamps were reissued in later sets, but it's worth pointing out that my 4th strip has the stamps that were redrawn in this series. They have very minor design changes and color variants. Oh, this page is a new kind of regular issue for Japan. These stamps were to encourage the use of their new postal code system, akin to the US zip code system. Each year, and for another 5 years, they issued a new pair of regular issues to support the adoption of this new system. In the last year, 1973, Japan issued a commemorative of the 5-year anniversary of the postal code system. I include a space for them here despite them being commemoratives because they complete the picture for me. By the way, I wouldn't have any of these stamps in my album if I hadn't done that earlier search through the collections I'm still processing. These are mostly from that mystery box I got from the Spellman Museum. Some of these may look familiar. Some of these are carried forward stamps with Nippon added to them. Others are new. Now we're getting into some of the more modern designs. My collection gets a little light from here forward. I don't have either of these curious issues. If someone understands what these stamps are about, please leave a comment. These stamps feature electronic mail, which seems so odd to me since my only understanding of electronic mail is email. That is, mail that doesn't use the postal system, and certainly doesn't need a stamp. I'd really like to know what the story behind these is. And with this stamp, we've reached the last stamp in my Japanese collection. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of my Japanese stamp collection. I'm really excited to fill in some spaces in these pages. I feel a little bit closer to the Japanese culture after putting together these pages, but I can't really put into words exactly why that would be. Oh, and before I finish, I want to give a shout out to Silk on the web. Thank you for the encouragement and your good videos. Go check out Silk's page if you get a chance.